Good morning, everybody. I am Co-Chair Gums, calling to order the Legislative Committee for today, which is January the 18th at 10:34-ish. And can I get a roll call, please?
Bates,
Bates here.
Doherty, Molina,
Molina present.
Silva,
Silva is here.
Strathman,
Strathman here.
Gums,
Gums here.
Linder,
Linder here.
Irag,
Here.
Seppi. We have quorum.
Very good. And can I get a motion to approve the minutes from December 21st, 2022?
Linder Bros.
Strathman second.
Silva seconds.
All right, we got to move in a second and a roll call on that, please.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Doherty, Molina,
Molina, yes.
Silva,
Silva, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Linder,
Linder, yes.
approved.
Very good. And now moving on to public comment. I think we have one signed up. All right, there we go. Mr. Evelar, if you could just please state your name and if it's on or off agenda and have at it. Thank you for being here.
This is Mark Avalar. This is off agenda. I'm from Algonquin, Illinois. And I'm speaking on behalf on two things, a follow-up from last month. I hope some of you all saw the podcast replay that I alluded to and saw the full context of the statements made. And to continue that discussion, the legislation that I'm working with State Representative Ness, it is still being drafted. She did tell me last week that over 2,000 pieces of legislation have been dropped. I've been following it real time. It is not dropped yet, but it will, hopefully by the end of next week at the latest. I know it's a short week. I want to allude also to the topic of the classification and independent contractors versus W-2s. And a day doesn't go by. Like, for instance, this last night at Springfield, Massachusetts, Latino Economic Development Corporation, and then it's the same questions of workers want the flexibility, and definitely no one should be exploited. And in fact, one of the legislation that has dropped, it's called House Bill 1122. When I saw that legislation, I started reading it. It looks very familiar, and sure enough, it was similar to a New York piece of legislation about creating a way for the state government to help protect independent contractors in New York State. It passed, but it was vetoed by the governor. So very complex topic, and Governor Hochul had her reasons to veto the bill, and I can share that detailed at the proper time. But I want to carry on. I know Dr. Silva is a member of this committee, and something she was saying at the Public Health Committee concerning the holistic view of mental health. And something that contributes to the stressors in right now, and in my work in mental health, I do see this too, and that is the ability to earn a living and having the choices and the flexibility. And amazingly enough, there are people, and I definitely shared this in a meeting with Madam Chair yesterday concerning, this started being more politicized unnecessarily going back about 6 to 8 years. And that full story I cannot tell now, but it's real, and it doesn't need to be politicized. Men and women have the right to choose to work the way they want to work. Obviously, laws are in place and there are safeguards in place, and right now there are currently safeguards, and that's something as the Ness legislation is formally dropped, that will be brought up during the discussion. But I want to just piggyback and dovetail off of the on the topic of mental health, and this is something that Co-Chair Gums, you brought up at the county board meeting, is the reauthorization of the SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration Program, increased the funding for 5 federal fiscal years, 61%. There's a real need, but we also need, and we know as an individual mental health board, leveraging that kind from the federal government cannot be done alone. That's why with the county and hopefully through your lobbying team and possibly through the county working with our local congressional representatives, the three of them, Congressman Krishnamurthy, I live in his district, as well as Congresswoman Underwood and Congressman Foster. That combined full court press can help us bring the additional alternative funding and hopefully make our county's public health needs, mental health needs, along as with the township level, more on the radar and possibly to win some of these additional grant funding. So that is something I encourage. I think that has to go through the legislative committee, through the county's lobbying organization, but that holistic approach can be done to help bring some of those desperately needed dollars here for a variety of reasons. By all means, let's do that. I'm certain, and I've alerted the mental health board in Dundee. That is hopefully a path we can take, and that's why I'm working. That's why I'm here today and working with the county to do this holistically and to do it right and to do it as fast as possible. Thank you for your time, and I'll stick around as long as I can. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Avalar. Appreciate your comments as always. Do we have any more public comment? I don't see anybody out there. We're going to skip over legislative update A, and we're going to move right on to B because we have our representative that has logged in via Zoom for us to do a little presentation. Welcome, Representative Hirschauer. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm
How are
sorry.
ya?
I'm good. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I appreciate the Zoom option. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Also, you do have the ability to share your screen if that's something you choose to do. I've notified our IT folks for that. So
Okay.
good morning, and the floor is yours.
Okay, great. I had all intentions of sharing my screen, but I didn't quite get to it. So I did forward you, Michelle, a handout that you could print out and give to folks later if they want. It's just an analysis of the Protect Illinois Communities Act. It might be handy for folks to have if they want it. So you will have that if you need it. But what I'll do right now is just, I know there are a lot of questions about the bill that was signed last week, so I'll go through it a little bit and then just make myself available to answer your questions. So first, I'm going to backtrack to give you a little bit of history behind the bill. For the past several months, I have been a part of a House Democratic Firearms Safety Working Group, which was under the leadership of Representative Bob Morgan, who represents Highland Park. And he himself was at the parade on that horrific day of the shooting. He was just about to step forward with his group of supporters, his family, his two kids, and his in-laws when the shots rang out. So I know a lot of us in this room have marched in parades. I know a lot of us, probably everybody has at least attended parades, but just to put yourself in those shoes is pretty impactful. So under Rep. Morgan's guidance, we met every week through July to November on this bill. Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. We spent countless hours meeting with gun violence survivors and different stakeholders. We met with law enforcement stakeholders. We met with the Illinois Sheriff's Association, the Illinois State Police, and the Illinois Association of Police Chiefs. Law enforcement had a seat at the table, and in fact, we incorporated many of their suggestions into our final negotiations of the bill. We really did spend a lot of time. This bill went through a lot of different iterations before it came back to us last Tuesday and was signed by the governor. So I will let you know just kind of the meat and potatoes of the bill. Firstly, it immediately ends the delivery, sale, import, and purchase of assault weapons in Illinois. Manufacturers in the state who are manufacturing, components of assault weapons or components of magazines, they may continue to manufacture for the purpose of selling to law enforcement, military, or out-of-state commerce. So there still will be some manufacturing happening in Illinois, but we have closed the door on delivery, sale, and purchase. We have provided provisions for legal and lawful gun owners to keep their assault weapons if they were purchased prior to the signing date, the bill was immediately effective. So it was signed last Tuesday night, which I'd have to look at the date, but from Tuesday on, if you had any weapons that are on the list, you are grandfathered in. What you need to do is you have almost an entire year, 11 and a half months until January 1st, 2024, to apply for an endorsement on your FOID card. So what you would do is ISP will build a portal for FOID card holders where they will go online and get their endorsement affidavit. They will give their FOID card number, an affirmation that they legally possess these weapons prior to the bill implementation. And then they will give the serial number, make, model, and caliber of their weapons. There are no fees associated with this. It is simply an endorsement that will then go on your FOID card. Within the bill, there are procedures for transferring a legally purchased assault weapon to either an heir, a person residing out of state, or a federally licensed firearm dealer. As I said, there are exceptions to who may, exceptions and exemptions in the bill. Any law enforcement is exempted. Active duty and retired peace officers, retired if you have served 10 years or more, and you have retired in good standing. Per federal law, there's a federal law that allows retired officers to keep their service weapon. So we are following that federal law there. So local law enforcement, all law enforcement is exempted, as are military, anybody working at a nuclear plant, things like that. There's a large list of exemptions. We can go into the nitty-gritty if you would like. So that's the assault weapons ban. We also did a large capacity magazine ban, which immediately bans the delivery, sale, or purchase of large capacity magazines, more than 10 rounds for a long gun and more than 15 rounds for a handgun. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then we also have a rapid fire device ban. So a lot of the everyday gun violence within the city of Chicago, city of Rockford, involves these things that on the street are called switches, which are applied to the trigger and just make the firearm an automatic firearm. So those are immediately banned devices. And if found to be using one, it will be a Class 2 felony. There are other pieces of the bill that do not, they're the less interesting pieces of the bill, I think. They're not getting as much attention. But we did increase the duration of the firearm restraining order here in Illinois from 6 months to 1 year. We also moved up universal background checks. They were supposed to start on on January 1st, 2024. We moved them up. So ISP will be doing universal background checks July 1st, 2023. And we also created an anti-trafficking unit in ISP to allow them to better collaborate with ATF and local law enforcement, because of course we know our gun laws are only as strong as the states that surround us. So what we're doing here is hoping to proactively increase our ability to prosecute illegal gun traffickers. And that's my overview of the bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions off the top. This is Chair Gumbs. And again, this is more informational for folks. Here in Illinois, fully automatic weapons are already banned at the federal level. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay. So when you had the meetings with folks, I know this is a political football, but when you had conversations, there's back and forth about what weaponry is entitled under the Second Amendment, what is not, all those things come up. But I just wanted informally, to inform folks that fully automatic weapons are illegal and have been illegal federally for a very long time. That's something that people need to be aware of, because I've gotten the question over the last several days. Also, you brought up the exemptions for law enforcement, retired and current. I know those folks have contacted me about those questions. And thank you for bringing that up. We, inform people about these things because most people don't read them and don't know, like you said, the little things in there that people don't understand. So I'm glad you're here. I don't think I have any more questions right now. I'm sure there'll be more that come up, but I know the panel is here and probably has lots of questions. So
Madam Chair,
Madam Bates, go right ahead.
do you recognize this letter, Ms. Hirschauer?
Oh,
This
I
is your
can't see
letter.
it, Mavis. Okay.
I'll explain.
Yeah, the public can't see that.
I
letter,
know.
so-
This is the letter that was written by Representative Barbara Hernandez, Representative Maura Hirschauer, Representative Anna Moeller, and Representative Suzanne Ness, addressed to the people of Kane County, addressing pretty much what the response has been from Sheriff Hayne. Many of us recognize Sheriff Hayne as a progressive sheriff who has done a lot to help our community, help our in-jail residents. Can you explain a little bit more about his response and what you think of it?
Excuse me, could we, before Corinne, I'm sorry to interrupt, that letter, who received that letter? If it went out to the people of Kane County, because I have not yet received that.
It was a press release that was written January 17th. Would you like my copy? Yesterday.
I think,
At this point, I think the question should be deferred.
Why?
Well, we don't have access to that press release.
If you give me 3 or 4 minutes, I can probably get it up.
That'll be fair. Okay.
I can defer for 3 or 4
Okay, yeah,
minutes.
thank you very much. So, let's do that. Representative, if you are good with that.
Sure.
Anybody else have any more questions? Madam Chair.
I'd like to know a little bit about the red flag law. I don't know if a lot of people here know about it. So perhaps, Representative, if you could speak a little bit about that and the extension from 6 months to 1 year, and what that would mean to protect the safety of the people that it impacts.
Sure, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to. So in Illinois, we have a firearm restraining order, which is also sometimes known as a red flag law. And what that means is if I am living in a house with a person whom I know to be a gun owner and have guns in their possession, and who I know to have to be in mental health crisis for whatever reason, if I fear for their safety and for the safety of myself and other people living in the house, I can petition the court for a firearm restraining order, which means we go before a judge, I explain the situation, and if the judge agrees with me, then the person would relinquish their guns to the local police department, where they would be kept in a safe. Prior to the passage of this law, they would release their guns for 6 months, and then we would go back to court and make sure that the mental health crisis is over, everyone is doing fine, and they would get their guns back. The change in this law just elongates that period from 6 months to 1 year before you can petition to get your guns back.
And please explain what a mental health crisis is for this, because I've heard pushback of taking personal property, that this is a legally owned weapon, and it's like taking away your car or taking away the pots and pans that you cook with. It's personal property. So how can this be exempt from that sense of ownership?
Well, I will say that the Illinois red flag law passed in 2017, I want to say. It's been on the books, maybe 2019, but prior to me being in the General Assembly, although I did advocate for it as a member of Moms Demand Action. What we do know is that Incidences of domestic violence are incredibly dangerous when there are weapons in the home, and the incidents of gun homicide by domestic partner are very high. This law, and also we are worried about suicide by firearm. Suicide by firearm is the most lethal form of suicide. And it is our attempt just to make sure folks are staying safe and getting the help they need. A lot of people will bring up mental health when we're talking about gun violence prevention. This is a tool to help folks access the mental health supports that they need when they are in crisis, and to do so safely without access to a firearm.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm in support of this, but I just think it's important that we as a board can fully understand what this means. So if a person has a significant other in their home or their child, their family, somebody who's living at their house that's potentially threatening them and a danger to themselves and or that family unit in that house, how do you go about stopping that immediately? Because the crisis is immediately occurring and perhaps they're threatening a gun, or perhaps has a gun in their hand. How do you, as the concerned family member or family unit person, call the police or the sheriff's office and say, I'm in trouble, get the gun out of here now? Do you have to go to court for that?
You know, I can actually answer that. I have a little experience in this, Representative, if you don't mind. So when somebody is actively in crisis and they have a handgun in their residence and you call 911 and you say, my son, daughter, or brother is sitting here and they're threatening me or themselves, the police would then arrive and hopefully they would take control of that situation with no injuries. They would then recover the weapon immediately because an incident has taken place. And that person would not have access, and then you would have a court date, and during that court date is when that would be issued. And then going forward, then that would be on your, the red flag would be there for a year, I believe, year now instead of 6 months. So that's how it comes into play. But in the crisis situation, that gun is being taken immediately. So.
I will also say that our state's attorney, State's Attorney Mosser, is incredibly knowledgeable about firearm restraining orders, and I think would be the best person for the board to ask these questions to. She's a proponent and very helpful in this area.
Very good. Do we get?
How we doing, Blair?
Okay. I think I can touch on it a little bit. Does anybody else have any questions right now? Yeah, Co-Chair Linder, go ahead.
Linder here. Representative, I think a lot of us, maybe even you, are convinced that this problem may never be solved, but it won't be largely affected until we have a national law. What efforts are taking place from the General Assembly point of view, from you and the rest of this committee, towards working towards getting the federal government to make a move in this regard?
I do agree with you. Thank you. I think a strong state like Illinois joining 8 others in an assault weapons ban is one step towards federal movement. I know that our governor, J.B. Pritzker, has said publicly that he will do all he can within his power when he's, on the federal stage. I guess right now he's in Europe talking about our assault weapons ban, to push this forward and to share what we are doing here in Illinois in the hopes of helping other states. And I was just on a national call a little bit earlier with some representatives from Minnesota and from some other Midwestern states, collaborating on how we can see laws like this passed in the states around us.
Do we have a chance in Indiana?
I don't know. I will say there were no Indiana representatives on that call. but voting our values, whether it is at the local level or at the state level or at the federal level, is really important. So I think we did that here in Illinois, and I am hopeful that we'll see some change at the federal level.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Ms. Bates.
So our Madam Chair, Ms. Gums, stated that the federal government already has a ban on fully automatic weapons.
Fully automatic and semi-automatic are two very different things.
Fully automatic. So this bill.
That's like a Tommy gun,
Oh, okay.
machine gun.
All right, that answers my question. So Blair has put up our, the letter, the picture he just took of the letter, which is, it's a little hard to read, but I just wanted to ask Representative Hirschauer, what you think we need to do next with the situation with some of our sheriffs.
Thank you for that question. I will say, we drafted this letter and put it out as a press release, much like how the sheriff drafted his statement, put it out as a press release as well. We felt that Sheriff Haynes' statements warranted some feedback from us as the legislators, as myself too. I was deeply, deeply involved in the crafting of this legislation and the passing of it. We wanted to make sure that there was no confusion, no confusion about what the law does. We wanted to make sure that folks know that this law is not a gun grab, that it does not dictate the sheriff's departments and their officers go door to door, checking FOID cards and collecting guns. That is not a piece of this legislation. So, and we wanted to, agree with Sheriff Haynes that we have a lot of work to do. Gun violence prevention is an enormous jigsaw puzzle of policy that we need to piece together. Mental health is a huge part of it. And, we have been making strides here in Illinois to better fund mental health across the state, to increase capacity for online visits and telehealth and things like that. And also to increase the tools and technology that we know law enforcement need to solve gun homicides. One thing I learned when we were meeting with advocates on the bill is that the unsolved homicide rate in impacted communities has a huge impact on the folks in those communities. So if law enforcement are not able to solve these crimes because they don't have the tools and technology and the budgets they need, that's impacting the people they serve and furthering the spiral of violence. So we agree with the sheriff on many points, but we wanted to clarify any misunderstandings that people might have gotten from his statement.
Thank you. I would just like to add, it seems to me that there are some sheriffs that have put out statements stating that they will not enforce the law. That is not what our sheriff said. Our sheriff said that he would not proactively go out and enforce the law. The way that I interpreted that, Representative, was that he was not going door to door. I want our community groups and our folks to understand that, and I don't want to speak for the sheriff. I did leave him a message last night, but I kind of understood that proactively means I'm going to go out and door to door. So that's not in his purview, but he did not say, like the other sheriffs did, that he would not enforce the law. So clarifying that, I think, was a good idea.
I want to say, Chairwoman, that is correct. And, we recognize that about Sheriff Haynes' statement. We also just wanted folks to understand that law enforcement was at the table for all of the negotiations, and they were given a chance to share their thoughts. And we actually, did negotiate and compromise with them on a lot of different things.
Thank you. Ms. Strathman, go ahead with your question.
Yes, Strathman here. Thank you for your information this morning. My comment is, like many of us, I'm a big supporter of Sheriff Haynes and all of his programs and his accomplishments. But I was wondering why the sheriffs, including Sheriff Hain, felt it necessary to even put out a statement of proactive or not proactive to support this. I would have thought that this would have been better for them not to comment in any way.
Mhm.
And I don't know if anybody else has any feelings about that.
I do have feelings about that. I will tell you, I did leave him a message last night. There is some talk perhaps of doing a committee of the whole next week. Hopefully we can get everybody at the table to have those discussions. I think that's important, especially not to leave it for later on. Madam Chair and I talked about that this morning. But, you know, as you said, to be fair, you know, not everybody agrees on everything, but
Right, right.
it just distinctly, he did not say he was not going to enforce the law. And that's something very different from other sheriffs than what they have said.
You know, I appreciate what you're saying, and I read his statement, but proactively did not jump out at me. So if I'm the only I cannot be the only person
Oh,
who did not see the word proactively or let it sink in. And I'm concerned that this is a little bit of an announcement to semi-assault weapon owners.
Yeah.
Or not legitimate owners, but you know.
Well, I would like to bring him to the table so he can address that.
I think that would be an
yeah,
excellent
so at
idea.
Our committee of the whole will have him there in our state's attorney's office. And we can have our representative back too if she'd like to join again, but
Oh, that would, Maura, that would be awesome if you're available next week, and we'll be in contact once we get it solidified. Because we'd love to have your voice at the table with all of this. Or one of your staff members to explain the process of this bill and how it took place. What concerned me, to follow up, if I may, on Ms. Strathman's comments, is that, and I think all of us can agree with this, whether or not you feel the law is justified or not, until the Supreme Court decides otherwise, it is the law of the land. And it does concern me to have the justice of the peace, police departments saying that we don't want to obey this law. Because it opens up a door saying, well, we just had something about fentanyl and sales of fentanyl. Well, I don't have to obey this law. Yes, it's a class 4 felony. We all know that, but you know, it's all right. And until that law gets changed, it remains exactly what it is. So that does concern me that they took the liberty of the 80 police sheriffs through the 102 counties make that statement. And that's the one is disturbing to me. Whether or not you feel assault weapons are something that people can individually own, that's a whole different discussion.
well, you know, and again, I understand everybody's comments, but I come from a different mindset on this. Obviously, I don't think assault weapon, I personally do not agree with assault weapons. That's my personal opinion. So I support this 100%. But having said that, you know, I have a, you know, old shirt in my box somewhere in the basement that says I can't drive 55 because I can't. So to your point, everything is the law. But like we are sitting here having that conversation in the law enforcement arena, there are folks probably coming to him and asking his opinion. So I believe I'm giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, and we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing. He probably had a lot of requests to make a statement. So let's bring him in next week to explain that. We don't want to admonish anybody for their opinions. And I think that's my personal opinion, but if the committee feels, you know, that he should address something separately, let's go ahead and do that next week. Mr. Tepe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question would be, are these firearm?
You're not on there.
Kidding me?
No.
No, it's not behaving. But neither is the mic.
Ah, there we go. That got turned on. My question would be, are the firearms still being sold?
That representative, that was effective immediately on the 10th, correct?
Correct, effective immediately on the 10th, no longer sales. I do believe that licensed firearm dealers can sell to those exempted people, local law enforcement, military, but not non-exempted FOID card holders.
Okay, and it reminds me, comes again, I did have a question, in reference to the registration of the grandfathered weapons. Would that, some confusion that I didn't look or locate, would that include those extended magazines? Are those gone forever?
Extended magazines
So
are,
17 rounds for law
Right,
enforcement,
right.
such things like that.
magazines don't have serial numbers, so there is no way to register them. So the extended magazine ban is just a
Can't have
ban.
'em.
Yeah.
Can't have them. Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Ms. Bates, go ahead.
So I have Sheriff Haynes' quote here from Facebook. What we will not do is proactively investigate legal FOID card holding gun owners and seize their firearms. And I think the confusion here that, thank you, Representative Hirschauer, you've cleared up, is you do not intend for anybody to go into people's homes and seize their firearms. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So for him to say he won't do that is a little misleading. It makes you think that's in the
Yeah.
law. It's not, it's not the intention of the law.
Yeah, I found his statement to be inflammatory. So what my
That's
focus
what
was-
I'm thinking. It's bad miscommunication
yes.
of the law. And thank you for your bravery, your courage, and doing this. I hate to be too complimentary on these. We all love you, but thank you for your courage on fighting this fight.
Thank you.
Very good. Does anybody else online have any questions?
I did see some in the chat from
Oh, yes, Mr. Avalar has a couple of things there if you want to respond to
Yes.
those.
so I
He
will
is
just-
actually in the room with us, so.
Oh, sorry. Just in a general response to the question about mental health, it's a valid question. And as I said before, it's a piece of the jigsaw puzzle that the Illinois General Assembly is attacking. This particular act, this particular policy only dealt with assault weapons and large capacity magazines, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We have made incredible investments into mental health across the state and to community violence interruption programs, which are really doing the boots on the ground work in impacted communities, whether it be through after school and before school care, job training, internships, food pantries. Those are the sorts of community organizations that we are supporting with record numbers in our budgets. And they are statistically proven to help end gun violence in those impacted communities. So we are doing both things, but what we're talking about right now is just the assault weapons ban.
I really appreciate it. I had attached to our agenda a whole list of new laws, and I don't know if there's anything in particular that go into effect on, that went into effect January 1st. Representative, if there's anything else that you wanted to highlight out of that lengthy list of laws that are in effect, you're welcome to speak on that. I did have one recent conversation about Senate Bill 208, which was the 40-hour work. I don't know. I can't think of the title right now.
The paid sick leave.
Paid sick
Paid
leave.
sick leave bill.
There
Yeah.
was some confusion with that bill. So I don't know if you are familiar with it or wanted to speak on it, but
Let me see if I
the
can.
confusion was that an employer would have to add another 40 hours onto what they already offer to employees. And that was not the intent.
Yes,
It's
you
not
know,
how it is written. So.
that is not how it is written, and I do not want to speak incorrectly on this because I know it's a very important policy that affects, business owners throughout the county. So Chairwoman, if you wouldn't mind sending me the questions directly and I can get concrete answers. And I'm also happy to come back further into session with more of an update because right now I think we are all recovering from this lame duck session that we just had and everybody's starting to file bills. So I don't have much of an update for upcoming legislation.
Very good. That's fair. All right. Anybody else have any more comments or questions for our representative? All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you'll come back soon. You're welcome anytime in person or on Zoom here.
Well,
So,
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Have a
All right.
great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. All right. Thank you, everybody, for that. Again, I did attach the new laws. Listen, they're so lengthy. I did not want to address them one-on-one here, but if anything popped out to any of you, and you want to talk about it, now is the time to do that. Well, not now, but here's a good time to do that. How about that? Here's a great time to do that.
Soon.
Yeah. And so we'll just kind of go past that if everybody's good with that. Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay.
Can I make one
Oh, yes.
suggestion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
I think we're all going to be in agreement with this. This is a slam dunk.
Madam
But we
Chair, I'm
have,
sorry, you're really soft.
oh, this is, I think we all can be in agreement with this. This is a slam dunk of approval, I believe, for everybody, but not for the legislature. The local distributive fund, if we can remember that one time it was at 10%, and then it was now, has been sitting at 6%. I would like us to formally, perhaps we can talk at the next meeting, to talk about what this is, so everyone gets an understanding, so we can move it up to 8% and take a stance and actually send a letter to our legislators for them to advocate for this. That additional resource of sales tax money would be critically important to help Kane County, since we have gotten a significant unfunded mandate that has come through with the Safety Act. That would be additional resources that would help support the general fund, which will help support those new initiatives. Also, because of the fact that I'm sure we've read in the paper and we've heard that it is forecasted that in one way, we're all supporting electric vehicles and fuel efficiency. In another way, we're losing a significant amount of money because of electric vehicles and fuel efficiency. So once again, we're going to be needing additional resources to make sure that our roads continue to be safe and they're able to be maintained. So you can't, we need help. We need financial help.
Yeah, there is money to be, and we'll, thank you for bringing that up. This committee, the former committee, before the new committee, we did address that and we did submit our witness slips. We actually wanted to go to 10%. So we're looking for 10.
Let's go
We
for
did get
10.
a small little bump this last time, but not quite there.
No,
So we will send a letter to our we don't need anything formal to do that. If we have consensus to support that increase, we'll go ahead and I'll draft a letter and send it to our legislators from our legislative committee.
Perhaps, but I think let's talk about it perhaps at the next meeting so that everybody gets an understanding what that funding means.
Yes.
And a little bit the history of it.
Good idea.
Absolutely.
We are all in agreement on that one.
We are, yes.
Good.
That is some money.
More money. All right. So under new business, there were some conference opportunities. There's been some questions. So as you all know, on the legislative committee, part of what we do is we interact with our legislators like we just did. So we can have that, we can cultivate those relationships and also plant seeds for new relationships, not only at the local level, but also at the federal level. So there are opportunities that we have that we just don't use and haven't used for whatever reason. Obviously, COVID has been an issue. So, but things are coming back to in-person events. So we are partners with ISACO and NACO, and there are conferences and conventions and all kinds of things that come up. And we should be engaging in those. We need, I think King County's on a path here to being a little shining star. That's my personal opinion on all things.
Chairman
that-
Gomes?
Yeah, Dr. Silva, go ahead.
I just so rudely interrupted you in the middle of your sentence.
Shame on you.
I know. And I can wait. I just had a
No.
thought regarding what you just mentioned, which I think is super important. Back when I was chairperson of the Public Health Committee, I was able to attend many legislative sessions and organizational meetings. And so one of the things I'd like to state is it would be great for you to be able to represent us on some of these conferences, because the amount of information that is there is invaluable, and the amount in such a short time of maybe a day or two you would be able to speak with people and see what they're doing that works for them. So I am in a big proponent of, let's send our representatives to better engage us, to help us understand what's going out in the world, what's working for people and what's not. So if you ever could find it in your time, I'd be very happy if you could represent us. And we'd have to obviously figure out how to go about doing that, but that's something that would be, I think, very beneficial for us on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. I do appreciate those words. I think it's important as well. Does anybody else have any comments on that? Madam Chair.
Just as a follow-up, if you so choose to do so, there is a process that we have a budget line for it. We will not be able to, the board will not be able to pay for all of it, but a small portion of it. And you would give us your receipts. It will then go through the process very much like my travel expenses do. Would go through committee process, be approved up by the full board, and you would receive a check for reimbursement. So that is the process of it. But there is some limited reimbursement for board members.
Mhm. Very good. Okay, we'll look into that because I think it's very important. So also, now we're going to talk about, does anybody else have any comments or questions about that? I think it's super important that we engage with these folks. It's how we get stuff done. It's how we get money. Mr. Linder?
I was just going to say that in some of my other associations, things I've done, there's a real benefit to attending those things and attending for the full time so that you have a chance over lunch or dinner or at the bar or whatever to talk to people from other places that can tell you what worked and didn't work for them. Some people view that as being a social opportunity. Certainly there is that aspect, but there really is a lot you can pick up by just interacting with people from other places who have similar interests, similar problems, and similar opportunities.
For sure. It's hard to explain to folks that when you're sitting at the bar or sitting at dinner, a lot of those conversations that are turning into legislative opportunities and grants that we get happen over that dinner. That's politics, right? That's what it is in a nutshell. So our cultivating those relationships is extremely important. Yeah, it can be fun. I'm not going to lie to you, but they're extremely important. So we have to utilize those. I was down with my fellow board member, Ms. Bates at Springfield last week doing those cultivating tools. And I know all of you have great relationships with your legislators. We need to continue to do that so we can work hard for our people here, so we can get things done that we need done here. I know NACO has something coming up next month. I think it's a little bit late to get that done, but I believe there's a legislative, that would be great for maybe next year to go to Washington to represent King County. We have smaller counties that go, and King County should be at the table. Great opportunities there. So. Did you have anything else? All right. Let's move on to our lobbyist update. So we're going to be doing, we have to renew our lobbyist position. So we're going to be putting that out. We have some guidelines. I think most of you have a general idea of what's out there in the RF. Is it an RFQ or P? I can't remember.
RFQ.
There you go. And so I think we
I
should.
believe it's actually an RFP that's being put
RFQ.
out.
I can't remember which. I do apologize for that, but I would like to get that out soon so that we can create a process by which we get our lobbyists back on board. Now, we do have a lobbyist that's still working for us, let's be honest, but we need to get that done. That was the request of this committee, to put that out so that we have other opportunities to take a look. And so we'll bring that forth as soon as possible.
And one of the things I would like to share, Dan Shulman is our lobbyist. He is not currently under contract, but he's graciously still helping us out. that if you have any suggestions for Mr. Showman, that you let me know, because it was very succinct that he would like to have it directed through one person, very much like when we're talking to any issues that go with the committee. You go to your chairperson first, and then you have that conversation, and then you distribute it out so that all of our department heads are not inundated with the questions from 24 separate board members, that it is filtered so they can be adequately responsive to your message. So if you have an idea for Dan, just let myself, Michelle know, and then we'll make sure that we respond accordingly and get that information to him, that question.
Also, we want to include Mr. Linder, who is going to be sitting here soon. We're going to alternate, I think.
Taking turns, yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yes, yes, yes. So when we were down in Springfield, we did have a few conversations about the $17.5 million in the Long Meadow project. You know,
Several,
several,
every person who could,
yeah.
couldn't
and-
run
and
fast
we do know,
enough.
we do know that Mr. Showman as well had those conversations. So, you know, those things are super important, and, you know, we have a good time when we're down there, but, it's not just about having a good time. It really is cultivating those relationships, creating new ones, and, not just, you know, I think at the beginning of when I first became chair of this committee, that we had a lengthy conversation about how legislative works and goes back and forth, and one of the key factors that I believe is essential is that relationship that you have with the people that are making the rules. And if a stranger walks up to a legislator and says, you know, I have this great idea and I think you should do it this way and that way, they're going to take a look at it. But if somebody they have a relationship walks up to them and says, you know, here's an idea that the county has, and this is what, you know, they're going to say, oh, that's a great idea, because I already know that person. So we need to keep cultivating those. And I encourage everybody on this committee to do that, and everybody on the board to do that. And they're always welcome. If you happen to be in a space with one of our legislators, invite them to come talk about whatever they'd like. Let me know, and or Mr. Linder know, and we'll get them on the agenda.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Bates.
I think the reciprocal relationship is very interesting. When we showed up for the swearing in of our representatives, Mr. Hanson, Ms. Hernandez, Mara Hirschauer, Linda Holmes, and Karina Villa, and, you know, other people up and down Kane County, it showed that we support them as much as we're asking for them to support us. So
Yes.
it was fun. It was a good feeling.
It was a good feeling until I got home, but we'll get into that later. Bad shoe situation. Any old way. Do we have any comments from our co-chair, Mr. Linder, at all?
Yeah, something that just struck me this morning. I sat in on public health, and a question came up about, is public health cooperating with the sheriff on gun locks? Okay, and so that's something we certainly are interested. We talked today about the weapons ban. Evidently the sheriff has a program on gun locks. I spent some time in that last meeting diddling to try to see what I could find. I didn't find anything. I'll ask. Public health is interested. If you just come to a county board meeting, you miss the fact that this stuff is popping up not in one committee, but in 2 or 3 or 4. And so it's been an experience for me as a new board member. I'm attending as many meetings as I can, trying to zoom in on others, but we all need to be paying attention to what's going on, because you can be blindsided if it comes up in your committee or comes up in a county board and you think this is something new and unrelated, when it's really coming across a lot of committees. That's just an observation. I guess that's all I really have right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. When I first, you know, Cheryl and I were like kind of fish out of water trying to figure things out, and the tentacles on the county are just everywhere. So we, you know, we learn as we go, but I think for the most part, the previous board, I think, and the current board, we go to all the meetings because we have the ability to utilize Zoom. So it's, you know, we have that ability. So it's easier and you're correct. So obviously we need to read our agendas before the county board, but
Madam Chair,
yes, Ms. Strathman.
for the new members, I'd also like them to know that when we started, when Michelle and I started, it was deep into COVID and we couldn't go to meet our representatives and, engage with them and develop a relationship with them. So what we did with the help of the county and Jane upstairs, we put together gift bags and we called it our traveling something show. And we went out and met all that we could, the legislators, and established relationships. So that's another way that we did it. And there, in the past, there have been coffees and lunches and none of that was able to happen because of COVID.
Right.
And so we did find a way around, which is part of the job of people on the board, is finding a workaround. So
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Thank you. Ms. Bates.
Should we bring back the legislative breakfast? We can put that on the back burner for now, but now that COVID's over.
Yeah.
I never attended one. I don't know what they were like, but
That's something to
maybe-
think about. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we'll discuss it offline because it's very complex for these folks. They're so busy and
Yeah.
I mean, we all know we're gotta be in 3 places at one time. So
we could have a Zoom legislative breakfast.
we did discuss that, actually. We did discuss that. We're like, do we DoorDash them?
yeah, that's what we were trying to figure out.
DoorDash coffee to everybody? I don't know. We have no need for executive session. So unless anybody else has anything to talk about, I think we're good for an adjournment, motion.
Bates moves.
Bates moves.
Strathman seconds.
Strathman seconds, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you,
Uh,
Madam Chair.
Oh, I did want to say one more quick thing. You can also look at the YouTube, the prior meetings from our YouTube. Those are always available to everybody and they're, when you're learning the position and trying to figure out what's going on, those are great tools to utilize. We have great questions from our other people and no, I was not at Washington at
No,
the
we were
Capitol,
not at
Ms.
Washington.
Travelar. I would have loved to have been, but no. All right, we are adjourned, everybody.